SW9 is going to prove that.
Is that a confirmation that Project Horizon is, in fact, SW9 there, John?
Could be.
I like the cheeky smile. I like the cheeky smile. On the first episode of Coaster Conversations, we have the only guest that I had in mind for this show's debut, and that is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. John Wardley himself. Thank you for agreeing to do this. How are you today, sir?
I'm very good, thanks, Sean. Yes.
Good.
How are
I'm
you?
glad to hear it. I'm okay. I'm a little tired this morning. I've got last minute trip to Efteling tomorrow, so I'm doing my last minute packing. And yes, I'm running on empty for the time being. But this interview takes priority. I'm going to go downstairs, get some Weetabix, and have me powered up for the rest of the day. Before we dive into the main stuff, John, I just have some simple, quick fire warm-up questions for you so the audience can get to know you a little better. So are you ready?
I am. Fire away.
Okay, so what's your favorite food?
Think about this. Well, I'm about to cook duck tonight, so let's say duck.
What's your favorite band?
Favorite band? Well, you see, being a product of the 1950s and 60s, it's got to be the Beatles, hasn't it?
It has indeed. It has indeed. Do you support a football team?
No, I don't. Although the recent Netflix series about Welcome to Wrexham has really made me interested in following Wrexham Town Football Club.
It's funny that a lot of people are of the same mindset. I believe they took over 4,000 people to a game against Coventry this weekend, and they beat them. And it's just incredible, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. Horror or romance?
Well, I'm not a horror fan because I personally believe that there's no place in the entertainment world for things that are sordid or violent or sadistic. It's fine to give people a bit of a fright, but when you get horror films that are plain sick, then I have no time for that at all. But I'm not a softie when it comes to romance. So I've got to say, with a degree of qualification, neither.
I was waiting for you to go straight down the middle and just say action.
Well, certainly, action is and escapism is fine, and that's what I've been doing all my life, both in the film industry and then latterly in the theme park world. So it's got to be straight down the middle.
And the most divisive question of them all, John, Nemesis or Nemesis Inferno?
Nemesis.
Oh, no, fantastic.
No hesitation. You want straight answers, you get them.
No hesitation there whatsoever. So I'm going to get to the point here, John. So it wasn't too long ago, I think it was back in 2013, you announced your retirement. I had visions of you on a beach somewhere sipping pina coladas. And then just like that, you're involved with The Wicker Man and 2 more Alton Towers projects in 2023. What is it about Alton Towers that keeps drawing you back in?
Well, Alton Towers gave us the opportunity to really refine our craft. Although Chessington World of Adventures was the first one, it was very much a case of taking very standard ride technology and adding a veneer of theming. But there was very little opportunity to really pioneer. Sure, things like the Bubble Works were imaginative and quite special, but it wasn't until we took over Alton Towers or bought Alton Towers that I really had to start thinking outside the box, because planning was notoriously difficult. The planners were great, actually. Staffordshire Moorlands weren't negative. They wanted us to develop the park. They wanted it to succeed, and they knew that we were sensitive to the site and all the limitations that were quite reasonably going to be imposed on us. And with the benefit of hindsight, they did us a big favour, because if we'd been able to do what Blackpool Pleasure Beach did with the big one and just throw a great big steel roller coaster up in the air, you wouldn't have Nemesis. It was because of the restrictions that were put on us that we really had to think outside the box and do it differently. And that's the case with a lot of the attractions that we developed there. So I feel that those first developments at Alton Towers allowed us to develop a craft that has been perpetuated by all the Merlin magic making creative people. They now don't do things in the conventional way. The attractions that they've designed for the Merlin parks all around the world have really used the basic grounding and ideas that we developed first at Alton Towers. So Alton Towers is a very special place for me.
Thank you very much for that, John. Now, the whole idea behind my Lift Thrills and Thrills channel is that I'm scared of heights. I set it up with the sole aim to conquer my fear of heights through theme park attractions. I keep doing these things to kind of test my limits and push my limits. So I just wanted to ask you, is there any fear that you have personally, or any attraction on the planet that still gives you apprehension before you ride it?
No, I don't think so. The only kind of attraction that will give me apprehension is if I don't feel that that attraction was fundamentally safe. So I'm not going to start mentioning places or attractions or whatever, but there is no doubt that some countries who don't have the same kind of rigorous safety standards that we have in Britain will allow attractions to be built that probably are not fundamentally safe. Our industry in Britain and Europe, and for that matter, America, is a very safe industry. You know, it's a proven fact that your journey to a theme park is far more dangerous than anything that you're going to do at a theme park. The safety standards that we employ were audited several years ago to ensure that they were compatible with the Atomic Energy Authority safety standards. So you can't get better than that. So I have no fear of attractions that I know are going to be fundamentally safe. And when it comes to height, I'm never really aware of height when I'm riding a roller coaster. You know, if I'm riding, a really tall ride, I'm just enjoying the adventure. I'm enjoying the journey ahead, because I know that the thing is fundamentally, the structure that I'm on is fundamentally safe. The vehicle that I'm riding in is glued to the track and is not going to leave it. I'm safely strapped in. And so I enjoy the ride.
I'm slowly coming around to that mindset. I was on Hyperion at Energylandia a few months ago, and I was like, okay, this is a ridiculously high coaster, but I have the harness, I feel safe. Get me on a Ferris wheel outside of the Trafford Centre in Manchester, and I'm crying because of how unsafe it feels.
Yes, yeah. I can understand that. And it's for that reason that I enjoy roller coasters, in as much as it's a journey. It's not just sticking you up in the air and dangling you there. It is a journey, and that is the thing that I find exciting. And it doesn't really matter whether it's high up in the air, or in the case of Nemesis, down in the ground, or Oblivion, down in the ground. You know, it doesn't make any difference. It's the travel, it's the adventure that lies ahead.
Absolutely. With a background history of working in special effects in movies, attractions nowadays seem to focus heavily on screens and digital means of effects. With projects like Valhalla at Blackpool Pleasure Beach kind of almost staying true to the old school special effects by making them more sustainable. Are you a fan of the more classic old school effects as opposed to these interactive screens and projectors you see on many of the rides today?
Without a shadow of doubt. Back in the 70s, when I was working on the Bond films, you know, if you wanted to cause something to collapse, you built a set and you collapsed it. If you wanted to blow something up, that's what you did. I wouldn't want to be sat at a terminal just typing at a keyboard, or working on a graphics tablet and creating effects like that. It was the fact that it was real. Fire was real, explosions were real, the chase was real. It wasn't done in front of a green screen. And so I'm very, very keen, whenever I'm involved now with any consultancy work, to try to ensure that it is real adventures that people are on, not simulated ones.
Now, I know that you can't say a great deal about the Haunted House project that you're working on, but just coming to think about that, there was an interview recently with Stoke-on-Trent Live with, I believe, Mark Fisher, who described
Sure.
the Haunted House going back to its old Haunted House roots with a more Victorian style with effects and that's similar. How much influence did you have in that particular decision? Because after what you just said, it sounds like a decision you'd campaigned for.
Without doubt. I was originally consulted on what should be done to the haunted house, and I was when I conceived the original haunted house, I wanted you to feel as if you were alone exploring this sinister house, but for capacity reasons we needed some kind of transit system that would be able to load in the way that Disney's Haunted Mansion endless transit system loads. But I've never been a great fan of Disney's Haunted Mansions, simply because you know that whatever is going to happen to you is happening to the people a few seconds ahead, just ahead of you, and the same will happen a few seconds behind for the people behind you. And you're just really window shopping. You're just slowly trundling through, and there is no real adventure to it, no surprises. And so the original ethos of the haunted house was to create that feeling, and I think it did it very, very successfully. It was a very popular attraction. The only reason why it was changed was that originally I conceived that to keep the haunted house fresh and keep the surprises going, that we would install a new effect every year. So there was always something around the corner that you weren't quite expecting. But the ride was a big success in its first year, and when it came to the second year, everyone thought, well, there's not much point in spending any money on it because people love it as it is. But that carried on year. So after about 10 years, the thing, to be honest, was looking a bit tired. It hadn't been kept up in the way that it should have been. And everyone was getting very excited about these shoot 'em up dark rides where you fired laser guns at little spots of light. But what they didn't realize was that by turning your dark ride into a shooting up game, the whole story, the atmosphere was irrelevant, and that the riders were so consumed with firing their little guns, they forgot what it was all about as far as the theme and the story. And I was very disappointed when the ride was turned into Duel. I thought it would be much better to revisit the original ethos of the haunted house, and to bring it up to date. But that is exactly what is happening now. And although I can't go into it in any detail, believe me, the new attraction that is going to open later this year, or hopefully at the beginning of the season, goes back to the original feeling that you are exploring that sinister place with a very clever backstory to it, which I firmly believe will grasp the visitor's imagination, and will bring that ride bang up to date using modern technology, but not, as you say, just looking at video screens and that sort of thing. The creative process that Merlin Magic Making have been going through is fantastic. It really is. I've been involved in that creative process. I've been honored to be involved in that creative process. I'm watching on the site the way it's all going. Had a walk around a few days ago and seeing how it was coming together. The attention to detail, the imagination that is being put in is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to it opening and seeing the reaction of the guests.
I'm ever so glad you've said that, John, especially with the removal of the laser guns, because it always kind of alienated me from the experience, as you just mentioned there. But at the same time, Jewel, when you're using those laser guns, it enhances the rerideability because you start competing against your friends. Has there been discussions regarding rerideability with this new reincarnation? And how important was that in the decision-making process to get a dark ride that is rerideable?
Well, what is being proposed, you certainly won't be able to take in one ride. And also there are things that you will want to ride a second time in order to fully appreciate what how it was done, what happened. I think it will be extremely repeatable. I have no issues with that at all, and there is no reason why it couldn't be kept up to date in the way that the original ride was intended to be kept up to date, but for various good reasons never was.
Right. Okay. After doing a little bit of research online, John, am I right in saying that you did some work on Saw the Ride at Thorpe Park?
I did the original layout and profile of the ride, and I was instrumental in suggesting putting that inversion in immediately after you leave the station. I don't think anyone had ever done anything as audacious and as unsuspecting as that. Normally, when you dispatch on a roller coaster from the station, the first thing that happens is you start going up the lift. They don't expect you to be plunged into darkness and turn upside down. And of course, that idea was taken on board as well with the ride at Alton Towers. I was involved, yes, in creating the layout of the ride and the basic concept of the roller coaster side. As far as the theming and the intellectual property was concerned, I wasn't involved in that.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for that surprise drop, because the first time that I ever went on it, I was having a lovely chat to a friend, and before I know it, I was dropping it and doing my first inversion without even exiting the show building.
Yes, well, the advantage of not putting the station at the lowest point in the ride, and this is really borne out with Nemesis. People don't understand this, but the problem with roller coasters is they defy the basic laws of showmanship, where showmanship is all about the big ending. It's the big spectacular ending. And a roller coaster does the opposite. It starts off big and spectacular, and it gets progressively tamer and weaker and weaker until eventually you go in the station. That's not what show business is all about. Now, by putting the station at a slightly elevated height, it means that you can carry on with the inversions and the excitement right up to the end, because you can dip down lower than the station. So in the case of Nemesis, nobody suspected that barrel roll just before you came into the station. We sort of hid it away. And when you first approach the ride, if you don't take a walk around the area, you don't see that coming. So that is a trick that I've employed several times, and obviously with the Smiler at Alton Towers, they decided to do the same thing with that, and I don't know that many people really take that on board. There are a number of things that I've done in my rides that other designers don't seem to understand. I mean, the one thing that I always used to try to do was, if you have to go over a footbridge to get from one platform to the other, the way most people do it is to put the footbridge so that when you get off the ride, you go over the bridge and back out. Now, in the case of the Bubble Works at Chessington, I thought, well, what about taking people over that footbridge so they could look down on the station at the loading process? Because those funny little round tubs, if you're confronted by that and you realize that they don't stop in the station, you're going to be a bit taken aback. Whereas if you can watch that process happening over the course of a few minutes while you're waiting to board the ride, by looking down on the station over the footbridge, then that is going to speed up the loading process. So I've done that on quite a few of my rides. Instead of going straight from the queue pens into the station and boarding the loading platform at the level area, take you over the footbridge so you could look down on it, and then come off the ride and go straight into the shop, which is pretty important, of course, from a commercial standpoint. Other designers don't seem to understand the theory behind this. It's quite extraordinary. But by doing that, it's amazing how you speed up the loading process.
Yeah, and with you mentioning about the unloading and the loading process there, I just want to bring your attention to Fly at Fantasialand. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that because Vekoma has seemingly fixed that unloading, offloading problem on a flying coaster. And I was just wondering if anything like that was considered for air at all.
Well, we're there. We knew that Vekoma were also trying to do a flying coaster, and we decided, and it was real cloak and dagger stuff because B&M realised that it was going to be a very successful product if they could crack it, and they set up with enormous security in an engineering facility in Switzerland, literally behind locked doors, the prototype vehicle. And it was decided that we would load the vehicle in the way that Nemesis loads and then tip you backwards. And it's worked very successfully. It's a complicated piece of kit. It's an expensive piece of kit, but you don't have the ignominy of going off backwards and then twisting upside down and things. You start to fly right from the word go, and that was decided. And I personally think it works very well, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Going back to the movie themed roller coasters for a second there, John, being such a big fan of films and with a history of working in films, if someone approached you today, most likely Alton Towers, of course, and they asked you to design a roller coaster based on a movie, what movie would you choose to design a coaster around, and why would that be?
Well, the main problem with intellectual properties is there's two problems. One is once you are able to ascertain the value of that intellectual property, it will then take you 2 or maybe 3 years for you to develop the attraction, by which time all the hype and excitement of that intellectual property will have gone, will have evaporated. So it's the durability, the popularity of that intellectual property. Now that's fine if you have access to a portfolio of properties that will have enormous ongoing appeal. That there will be future versions of that movie being produced. But when it comes to a one-off, you have to be extremely careful and be aware of the fact that by the time your ride opens, that particular property might be a real has-been. Now that's fine if you are a Universal or a Disney, because you are able to conceive those attractions at the same time as you're starting to think about when the movie is going to release. But if you don't have that luxury, then I think you have to steer clear of it. So the answer is I really don't know, and I would rather be. If someone said to me, "This is the movie we want you to do," then sure, fair enough, you do it. But I certainly would not like to have the onerous responsibility of being able to predict whether a particular movie would still be popular in 3 years' time when my roller coaster opens.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because Uncharted is based around the new films with Mark Wahlberg, and they're opening the indoor Intamin coaster, I believe, in Portaventura. And it's strange that how that movie even came to conception in the first place, because it's the video game that's the most popular. And obviously the studios do spin-offs of these video games and put them on a big screen for feature films. But it's a strange decision for me to have it themed around the movie, which is still very controversial in its origins compared to the video game, which is what made the entire franchise popular in the first place.
Yes, I mean, what some people have done is conceived the attraction, the roller coaster, and then at the last minute applied the intellectual property. But this is fairly puerile and superficial. It's just a case of what color do you paint the damn thing, and what does the sign look like? So and then just work that into your television advertising a bit. But I don't think that's the way to go. And I've always tried to think outside the box and conceive different imaginative attractions. There have been occasions, and you mentioned Saw, when it's been appropriate to apply a movie property to it. But I've found it much more fun thinking outside the box and creating something different from scratch.
I can now imagine a lot of enthusiasts crossing their fingers going, please be an original IP, Project Horizon. Please be an original IP.
Yes, and I think SW9 is going to prove that.
Is that a confirmation that Project Horizon is, in fact, SW9 there, John?
Could be.
I like the cheeky smile. I like the cheeky smile. Another Sean who reached out to me, and known as Parkspill on YouTube, wanted me to very quickly ask you what is your opinion on UK parks versus European parks in terms of their quality and ride offering.
There is no doubt that a large number of European parks are very high quality. Some of them tend to replicate Disney or Universal attractions and produce their own versions of them. Some of them, particularly the French parks, really do think outside the box and produce some pretty strange and wacky stuff. There's good and bad in both markets. There are some pretty atrocious European parks, and there are some not such good British parks. I like to think that the British parks are tailored specifically for the British market. Some of the things that we do in our parks would not work in European parks. And I found that very interesting when we were working on Portaventura, because I was quite instrumental in the original rides at Portaventura in Spain, and getting to grips with not just the European market in general, but the Spanish market and the way they think and what they want out of an attraction vis-a-vis what would be completely wasted if we put it into a British attraction, and vice versa. So there are differences in the market. You have to be aware of exactly who you're trying to entertain. And just as other forms of entertainment that are conceived for the European market won't work in Britain, and vice versa. So the same is true of theme park attractions. But there are some lovely, lovely parks in Europe, and you're about to visit one tomorrow, as you well know.
I just love that part where you can step in and you're fully immersed. There's no sort of it's not like an individual just ride dotted here, there, and everywhere. It's the full, complete package of immersive theming where it's complete escapism at its finest, and that's what I love more than anything else. And it's funny you mentioned Portaventura there, because the rumors are doing the rounds that Universal are going to completely take over that property wholeheartedly. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on that, and how will that change the future of Portaventura?
We sold our stake in Portaventura in order to buy Thorpe Park. So we wouldn't own Thorpe Park if we hadn't sold our stake. Pearson made it abundantly clear that if you want the money to buy Thorpe Park, you better sell your stake in Portaventura. And the park has gone from strength to strength, and I'm sure that Disney dearly regret not having chosen that site rather than Paris. And Portaventura is a lovely park, and I thoroughly enjoyed the months that I spent there leading up to the opening, and the opening day of that park was a very exciting time. I can remember seeing that great sea of people burst through the turnstiles that had never set foot in the park before, and just watching their faces as they were exploring the park and riding the rides. It was very exciting indeed. So I really enjoyed my time working at Portaventura, and it taught us an awful lot as well when it came to subsequent developments in our British parks.
With Zoom shouting at me saying we've only got 10 minutes left, John, I just wanted to quickly speak about the Nemesis refurbishment, which is most likely the biggest news out of Alton Towers in 2022. Now, the closing day event was quite the spectacle. Was it a little overwhelming for yourself seeing all those people there to celebrate a ride that holds a special place in your heart?
Yes, it was. It was very moving. Everyone was saying, "Oh, isn't it rather sad Nemesis is closing?" And I was saying, "No, it's very exciting that this is the start of the next 30 years of Nemesis." You know, the affection that and loyalty that people, not just in Britain, but around the world. I mean, we had people come over from the States just for that last day of riding Nemesis.
Yeah.
It was quite extraordinary. I was talking to some people from Texas, and they hadn't come over to Britain for any other reason than they wanted to be there on the last day. So it was very exciting, and I'm just absolutely thrilled that what I created 30 years ago, it's going to have another 30 years. It's going to see me out. There's no doubt whatsoever.
Okay, John, I'm going to be very brave with this question because it's been sent to my inbox more times than I can even keep up with. You can cheeky smile. You can call this a conversation to an end and cut me off. Will the Nemesis track be black, John?
What does the colour of the track matter? I mean, people have seen bits of B&M track being fabricated in the States, painted black. And surely that is the least important thing. I really can't understand why it is intriguing people so much.
It's crazy, isn't it? I think for me, in terms of if there was another attraction to be open this year that highlighted the backstory more or paved the way for the future Nemesis return, I feel as though that track could actually play into the story. But a lot of people are of two mindsets now. A lot of people are saying that the track itself is actually what's keeping the creature restrained, and other people are saying that the track is actually part of the creature. John, which one is it, sir?
You're going to have to wait
for no.
15 months or whatever it is to find out.
Okay, no problem at all.
What I would say is what is being proposed is fantastic. I'm really thrilled, and I think all the visitors to Alton Towers will be equally thrilled.
I'm sure they will, John. I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me today. And for those who haven't checked out the book already, Creating My Own Nemesis, John's autobiography, is available to purchase online, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. With that said, John, do you offer signed copies at all? Because I might have to pick one up from you.
Well, I do sign copies when I do events, and under certain circumstances I will sign books, but generally speaking, the way is to catch me at one of the events and bring your book along, and I'm more than happy to meet people and chat with them and sign copies.
Fantastic. So the next time you see a guy dressed like a giant Smurf coming up to you and asking you for an autograph, you'll know it was me, and you know we had this chat today. Thank you very much, John. And is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers out there before we wrap this up?
No, but just thank you for your interest and support. You know, online communities can be extremely negative about things, but that does not apply to the theme park community in general. They're positive, they're encouraging, and I find that encouragement spurs me on. So, you know, just to thank everybody for their attitude towards the theme parks and the people that are creating the attractions and operating them. I'm really grateful to them.